Will, thank you so much for the introduction. I will directly go to the question, starting with Liz. Please introduce yourself to the crowd and please tell us about your firms and what kind of clients do you help?
Sure. So Liz Mason, founder and CEO of High Rock Accounting. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. Had this idea that I could use really cool cloud-based technology, integrate it all, and do my job from anywhere in the world. And at the same time, I wanted to build a culture where we could actually treat humans well. And so that was really the two founding principles of High Rock when we started. We've branched into a few other things. We have a couple sister companies, including Rebel Rock, that focuses on cannabis accounting. We have about 35 people on our team all over the US, and our clients are all over the world at this point.
This is always the weirdest part of these conversations, like when you have to talk about yourself.
It's like a first date. It's just awkward.
The highlight bullets, I think, are we have a 110-person remote CPA firm. We specialize in the sort of $2 million and up realm of companies. Started about 10 years ago with my business partner. The fun parts about the life are being able to make really weird life decisions when your company gets a little older. And that one weird life decision that my family and I made was that we would kind of give up our house and we moved into the RV like the person that chases something and they don't really know what they're going after. And we've been doing that for 5 years. So that's the bullet points on me.
Chase Birky, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Dark Horse CPAs, and I'd like to thank everyone for foregoing Jason's stats presentation and showing up here. Don't know what you're doing here, but nonetheless, we are really a different type of accounting firm, what we would call a platform CPA firm, and our primary customer is our CPAs, our principals, and their supporting teams. It's really kind of a 180 view on what an accounting firm could be. So we're providing the infrastructure, the technology, the resources, the branding, so on and so forth for folks to be able to build and scale a practice of their own within a community that's collaborative and supportive. In terms of kind of the fun parts, it's really just being able to think outside of the box and do something that no one's telling you you can't do, and if they are, they don't have the authority to really hold you down. So it's really just that creative vision and the flexibility that comes along with that. That's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. We have people doing new kind of business, pursuit of happiness with RV and making big decisions in the RV world and have a platform. Such a cool crowd of people here, amazing rock stars. So I think we have like 3-4 minutes each on this question. Is we are 2-3 years in the era of remote work. You all have remote work companies. And what is your current working type, and how are you guys working? How are you guys managing, and what is the culture? And let's start with you again.
Sure.
Ladies first.
So we are remote first, but we also have an office. We have a physical office in Scottsdale, Arizona that's absolutely gorgeous, and it's near a lake and has coffee shops, and there's probably 2 people there on any given day. My business partner and I both live close by to that, so we end up going in just because we like collaborating with each other and working in an environment that's not our homes. We encourage the team members in Arizona, which is all of, I think, 6 of us at this point, to come in whenever they can. And we have a great, in-person culture, but we've also done everything we can to extend that to our remote team and make sure that they're feeling the love, so to speak. And they know that, wherever they are in the world, it does not matter. They're still part of our team.
Where are most of the people that exist on your team outside of Arizona?
So we have a concentration in Minneapolis, in North Carolina, and in Orlando that are all about 3 people.
Nice. Do they ever want to get together?
Yeah, we've done a few events in those areas, which has been really interesting, as well as like anytime someone's in those cities or around other team members, they're connecting and they're having a happy hour, or trying to find local type conferences to connect at and pull more team members over. So we've been doing as much as we can to connect people face to face whenever possible.
So we all want to know, are you paying for them to get together and covering drinks?
Depends on the day. Definitely depends on the situation. But we do, sponsor events for them to go to. Absolutely.
Nice. Our current work model is work wherever you want, and we've been doing that from day one. So we started in 2012, and it was just my business partner and I, and he was in Tel Aviv of all places, and I was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and all I wanted to do was be with my kids, and that was the whole precipice for wanting to work remotely. And we had no idea what we were doing, probably broke lots of rules and laws, but what we did was just try. And over the last decade, it feels like you just learn more and more about what you stand for and what's important to you and what your team members want and what is attractive to people on job advertisements and what's expensive and what's not expensive but is super valuable. So we've kind of morphed into this company where we've never had an office, so we don't really know what that looks like. All of the procedures are built around like trust and good QA, having people that can support each other very well. So we've ended up having a lot of positions that exist just to support the work and remote culture. And like one of the very first things we ever did was we promoted someone who was revered and loved by all the team members into an HR role with no HR experience, looking back, good and bad. But the good was that everybody loved her, and like there was more emphasis now on paying for people's drinks, getting regional meetups together. They put in I think it was like a $1,500 travel stipend where you can go anywhere you want in the world as long as you took somebody else from work. And like that was the stipulation. So it just like it's a good reminder that like the people will speak around like what's important to them as your team kind of grows. And right now there are lots of programs that exist. Some people take advantage of, some they don't. But I think it's just offering that and letting people choose, just kind of like a good healthcare plan.
So how did you connect with the guy in Tel Aviv?
The Zero partner directory, and actually Will was speaking to Josh over something back in 2012, and he mentioned me, and then we just kind of connected, and like there weren't too many people that were trying to do that, present
Small
company
community.
included, and we just talked, and he's like, "How are you doing this?" I said, "I don't know."
So you went fully on faith, started a remote company with a guy that you just had a few conversations
Never met.
with?
We had a bank account before we had ever met.
Wow.
And the first time we met, this is like, we went into the woods for 3 days and came out alive. And we had discussed like what was important to us, what we wanted to get out of life, and like remote was a huge component of that, and like never wavering on moving from that, and we never have. So alive out of the woods.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
You can learn so much about the person in traveling, actually.
With no devices, no cell service, just camping in the woods. I realized like I do not like that type of camping.
Yeah, and Chad, I think you made a point that I really like there. And it's really important to know who you are as a business, what you stand for, what value you're bringing to your employees, your clients, and just having a brand for talent, because we're entirely remote, and we have been really since the start, unless you count my garage as an office for the first couple of years. But there's something about the in-person element that you are never going to be able to replace, right? For the same reason you wouldn't be married to someone that you could only interact with over Zoom, right? If you couldn't sleep next to them, that probably wouldn't work out. So there's something that's missed in that in-person or lack thereof. But really in its place, our solution has been, okay, we have to really be purpose-driven. We have to, have a strong value proposition that keeps our folks engaged and collaborating together. And we've found that it just requires a lot of intentionality, because when you don't have those casual encounters with folks, you really have to schedule or just make the time to get in front of someone, and have, an in-depth conversation, because if you don't make space for it, it's just not going to happen. But I really believe that if you have the folks aligned in the right way, if you extend trust to them, we're talking about CPAs and accountants that are type A, high integrity, high capacity folks, and I think for too long we've just tried to top-down control them, and there's probably some workers out there that need that, but by and large we're talking about folks that if you give them the right tools, if you empower them, they're capable of so much more than you might see in another structure.
So how do you build that intentionality?
Well, I mean, you have to really know, what you're in business to do, I would say. I think that there's a lot of firms that just start with the client, what is the client experience we want to deliver, and how do we reverse engineer our employees to get into that. We start with our folks in terms of how do we empower them, how do we give them the tools, give them the resources, so that they can really self-actualize. And so that's kind of our core guiding principles to, make our folks have, more profitable, more sustainable practices, and everything we do is to serve them. So as a result, that kind of informs, how we operate on a day-to-day basis.
Amazing. Yeah, in the CPA world, it's like trust is already embedded with the CPAs, but also the clients want to meet with the CPAs and build the trust, right? And in old days, you meet with the CPA time to time. So how did you guys solve that thing, and how you build that trust with the clients in the new world of Zoom? Right, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I think half our clients don't really want to hear from us, and the other half want to talk to us every hour of every day. And so it's kind of building in the expectations of communication from the get-go, right? And so we're very clear with our clients, and always have been, hey, we use cloud tools. We're not going to show up in your office. And if we do, it's likely because something's wrong. Like there's a broken process, there's something that needs to be solved, and we need to come physically fix it, right? And if that's the case, like we're going to be having more difficult conversations, right? And when we go through implementation, we set very clear expectations on communication. We say, okay, you're signed up for this package. That means you get weekly calls for 1 hour with your controller. What does that look like? Here's the agenda we're going to give you. Here's the information we'll be talking about, what feedback we need from you, how we need you to interact with us. And then we set communication protocols as well. So beyond just that, we say, okay, well, if you email us, we'll respond within 24 hours of your email. If you call us, we'll respond within an hour of the call because that means something's really urgent. Or we'll at least acknowledge it and say, hey, I'm back to back for the next 4 hours. Are you available at 3 p.m.? Let's jump on a call, right? And if they're texting, that generally means there's something on fire. And we say, like, if you're texting us, like, we think the world is ending for your business if we don't respond to you. So only text us in case of emergency, or we're just going to start ignoring the texts, and you're not going to get the level of service that you want, right? And so we set that up very clearly on the client side, and we set up those expectations with our teams as well as to what those communication protocols look like. And then, of course, we ask our team to connect with their clients, right? And kind of teach them how to be a good person, right? At the end of the day, that's what it is, because human connection is, what humans are here for, right? And so when you're building client relationships and trust, you really need to step into it with the perspective of this is not just a client, this is a human being. Who are they? What are they interested in? What matters to them? What's their strategy, right? Not just for the business, but what's their personal strategy? Where are they going next, right? And because we've done that so well, we actually have a few people on our team that came from clients. Either the client IPO'd and they didn't really like the environment after that, or they sold to private equity and same story. And they called us and said, hey, I want to come be an advisor on your team. And that's a great compliment to what it means to actually build true relationships. You look confused, Chad.
That was a lot.
Were those too many words for you?
Yeah, it was
I'll
good.
try and break it down.
It was good, okay.
The TLDR, communication.
Thank you, okay, good. No, I like that. The people are coming back to you afterwards. Yeah, setting. I don't have a lot of good stuff of like gold nuggets on this one because we've always had customers be remote with us, so we don't have advice on going from not that to that. But I would say, I don't know, I go on there's some panels where you're like, I don't know if you're gonna actually get nuggets of wisdom out of something, so I'm trying to think about something that has really helped us. And I think it comes down to like peers. So if you have a good understanding of what your peers are selling and how they work, if a customer wants to work in person and you don't offer that, understanding who does in your industry, your neighbors, your competitors across the country, it doesn't matter. Actually, it would matter if it's in person. But just getting an idea of who can support them makes you seem incredibly helpful. So we have a database of lots of firms in lots of countries that we trust, that we've talked to and met at places like this. And we understand who they want to work with, who they're really good to work with. And when it comes to actually creating a referral or an introduction to somebody else, if they don't fit within your model, we have a little Airtable database where we just pick the people that this lead is going to be referred to, and all the email intros are made, the reminders are sent out. If it's double blind, it's all done. And we probably send out 5 or 6 referral emails a day from customers who are inquiring that don't work in the way that we can work. Yeah, so maybe that's the 2 pieces. It's like, be helpful and also really know what you stand for, because as things get bigger, they get more complex, and complexity is hard. So simplifying it and like standing for something is pretty powerful.
Yeah, we've pretty much always worked with folks in a remote environment, but the pandemic really was helpful in getting people to trust that as kind of a primary way to work with their CPA. And I think one of the things we've found over time is that a lot of times when people are insistent on that in-person meeting, or even if it's just an initial meeting or the ongoing ones, a lot of times that speaks to the fact that they felt like they really were only getting their previous CPA's full attention when they were in person. So it's really incumbent upon us to say, look, you're going to get more of our attention by hopping on a Teams meeting than us scheduling a time for you to come into an office which doesn't exist. And also it's somewhat of an indicator of, okay, are they going to want to work in a paper-based environment? Are they going to be able to work with the cloud-based tools that we have? And getting clear on, is this going to be a client that we can work with in the way that we have set ourselves up to work? Because, there's no shortage of clients out there. I think we all understand that inherently, but it's not always easy to set that boundary of, I really want to help this person out. Maybe I'll go out of my norm, to make that happen. But at the end of the day, we can provide a lot more value to the folks that are working virtually in the way that we work. And they end up seeing that even if they're a little bit hesitant to start. But it's really just about knowing what's ultimately going to be best for the client that will actually be able to work with you. And then if that's not a good fit, refer them out to firms that will work that way.
So I totally agree with that. And we're used to working with clients that not necessarily think about their CPAs in terms of like, I go to their office, but they're coming to us because they had an internal controller and they can no longer staff that position, right? It's impossible for them to find a quality human, and they've gone through 3 people in the last 2 years and their books are a mess. They have no idea where their information is. And so one of the things we started doing to kind of pre-vet, because there is so much client work, is we built out a whole form. And the first form is like, are you a good fit for our firm? How do you expect to communicate? Like if you send an email on the weekend, do you expect us to respond immediately? Do you expect us to come to your office? Like what are your expectations around what you're looking for? And if it comes back as a negative, like they have too few points to actually move forward in our process, we send them this email that's like, hey, thank you so much for your interest. We're at capacity, but we'll reach out. And if they are not, then they get sent to a second form that actually collects all the information we need to have like a really good first prospect meeting with them. Because you're right, like if you get the wrong clients in the door, you can't function in the remote environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something very cool. I want to learn this. You were at least talking about sending like a very structured communication pattern, and you just said Airtable and you have cloud tools. So what are the top tools that you guys are using, like practical, like Airtable, Notion, Zendesk? Like what is the interesting tools that you guys like? And we can start with you.
We do all of our CRM through HubSpot.
HubSpot.
Which I think is atypical for a lot of accounting firms. We do just about everything on Teams in terms of collaboration.
Microsoft Teams.
Exactly, internal and external. Beyond that, we're working through building our own client portal, that will centralize communications, because one of the things that becomes difficult in a cloud-based environment is there's so many ways for communications and documentation to come your way. People could be texting you, they could be emailing you, they could be mailing you something, they could be leaving you a voicemail. I mean, there's all of these inbound sources of knowledge points that you need.
You get mail?
What's that like?
I personally don't, but there are some folks that are just very, paper-based. We're actually going to be rolling out something where we'll just send them a pre-stamped envelope, to send all that information to us. But we'll probably charge them twice what we would anyone else if they want to go that route. Yeah, 4 times maybe, yeah. But being able to centralize that, communication. Another big tool that we're rolling out that we're really excited about is Sorban. They are not well known in the industry yet because they're brand new. They went through the Y Combinator process, but the founder is a practitioner and he really understands what a smart, responsive organizer looks like, how you can integrate it into your workflows, how you can have that data automation go into your tax software, how you can avoid getting in the middle of trying to, get people through the process of answering the questions, of uploading the documentation, because that's a huge bottleneck in any tax season. So, just anything we can do to kind of minimize the friction of, where we need to manually intervene is huge for us.
How do you spell that?
Sorban, S-O-R-A-B-A-N. Yeah.
How old are they?
Like 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of conversations about how to make a good questionnaire and.
Yeah, because you don't want to send someone a 40-page PDF and they're like, why am I paying you, right? At the end of the day, it's like this should be easier than using TurboTax, and it should be a much higher quality product at the end of the day. And if we're sending huge organizers with a bunch of non-applicable questions, I mean that's a terrible client experience.
This is not a Sorban ad, but how much does it cost?
No, these are good questions. This is the real question. Yeah.
We all want to know.
So it's a little bit volume-based, but it's actually more expensive than what we pay per return on ProConnect. So
it has to be valuable to use it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where, we put $40,000 deposit down on that, for all the returns we're going to be doing. And if that's just a one-off practitioner, that's a huge commitment, something that they're not apt to do, but.
Well, you've basically hired yourself a virtual assistant through data collection, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
it could pay off across a lot of people.
Yeah, and what we tell folks is like, look, okay, there's some hard costs on filing a return. There's Sorban, there's, ProConnect, there's a couple of things that, therapy, it's a hard cost. So we're not going to do a tax return for under $600 at this point, because if it's less than that, it's like, what value are we truly bringing to the equation anyways? And if your time is valuable, which it is, why spend so much of your time in the admin of trying to get people through the process just so you can prepare the return?
Mm-hmm. I suppose I should go. So I get a lot of.
You can start with Airtable.
I get a lot of inspiration from this really nerdy podcast called Automation Town. You should all listen to it.
Can you repeat the name?
Automation Town. Yes, a friend of mine has it. It's very, very good. Automation Town. I'm definitely not the co-host. Definitely not. So tech-wise, we've changed over the years, but primarily we're Google and Slack. Not in the Microsoft ecosystem. We use Carbon for all of our project management stuff. There's so much. I can imagine how much we all pay in credit card fees or in money on credit cards for apps. But to think about CRM stuff outside of Carbon, we actually got pretty frustrated and wanted a complete sales to onboarding experience that was for us. And we had been doing a whole bunch of stuff in Google Sheets and paying for people to organize them. And you went through a whole thing with, Dynamics? Yeah. And we just were there's just got to be a better way to do this whole thing in one place where you don't have to connect data or give up something that's important to you. So there's a tool that is pretty complicated, and it's for developers. It's called Bubble. And what we did was we built our entire operating system for sales the way we wanted it, completely from scratch. So now we do sales intake, where we gather 200 to 300 data points. That turns into a pricing presentation built on logic for that. Then that turns into them selecting it, and a proposal, and invoicing, and payments, and then that turns into onboarding, which is really cool. So the team has all the data, and they know exactly what to do, and it's all linked in with Carbon. And then we pass it off to the team, and they have their tasks all in it. And we'll save probably 60 or 80 grand in labor in the first 6 months just by having that like that. And it only costs us like 60 grand to build. So it paid for itself like
Is it built?
super fast. It's built, it's used right now.
Awesome.
And then, of course, just to appease you, we use Airtable a lot for a bunch of stuff. And our dev team, so we also have a dev team in the firm. There's 5 of them, and they don't use Carbon. They use traditional task management systems like ClickUp to do a lot of automations that way. And then all the automations in the firm for our clients and ourselves are typically done through Make or Integromat instead of Zapier.
But quick thing, like using Bubble is a very smart choice. Bubble is like a no-code platform, so it's not like you need to hire your developers to do so much stuff. And the other cool thing in Bubble is, I don't know Bubble guys, but I'm not promoting it, but it integrates with a lot of tools, sort of a no-code way.
You just build your own APIs.
You don't need to hire amazing developers. Like any developer can go and build that. That might be a good case. You should reach the Bubble.
I'll give you an example. Like this morning, right before this call, remote work. Okay, we were.
It's a dream.
I was on with the dev team, and we were like, oh, we need to fix the ability in a proposal to take an entity and then decide which entity is going to pay for that entity. Like maybe there's holdcos or personal taxes and stuff. And inside of 12 minutes, they built out the entire, like, which currency is it, which entity is going to be billed, and back to the zero connection because we already had the API connection in, and it was just smooth. So it's like, there's so much to be unearthed if you can make the time for this kind of stuff. And it sounds like if you want to spend 40 grand on Soroban, you're good. But like, there's other stuff too. How about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So I'm gonna kind of ground this for our audience. When you're thinking about managing remote teams, how you manage them and the tools you use is integral to actually being successful at it. And so I can tell you kind of the fail story to where we are now and why our tech platform now is so different. I'm incredibly ADHD, founded the firm. I love technology. Like my first job, I literally coded myself out of a job. And I like had a habit of finding these platforms nobody in the accounting space had ever heard of and being like, I can build this, but the maintenance got really hard because I couldn't do it all myself and I couldn't afford to hire someone internally to handle all that maintenance at the scale we were at. And so we ended up with a lot of hacked together, duct taped systems that most of the time worked okay, sometimes worked exceptionally well, and other times just flat out failed. And it was the failure piece of it, and even though it was not necessarily the majority of the time that it failed, that 10 to 20% of the time that it did, our team lost so much because they didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. And when you have a team of accountants that don't know what they're supposed to be doing, it just creates more failures and more feeling of uneasiness, and then there's more change, and that's not okay. And so clearly it just wasn't functioning, even though, you know, there may have been some super cool stuff in there. And so we took the thought that, okay, we need to kind of scrap as much of the duct taping all the little things together and find a platform where we can do end-to-end client relationship management and our team could have full visibility into everything. Not only could they have full visibility into like what their tasks are, but they can see what the sales process looked like. They can see those intake videos. They can see the original proposal. Then they can see the edited proposal and what actually got signed on the engagement letter. They could see all the contacts and all the information that we write down, and there was no more miscommunication between transferring clients from, you know, sales team to implementation team to production team. It was more one streamlined set of information that was flowing through a process beautifully and uninhibited. And so that's the vision, right? Like I'm a CEO, that's what I do. I can present vision, how it actually works, right? So right now we're using majority Microsoft Dynamics, and we chose that platform for a few reasons. Recently, they redid the way they're doing data lakes, and so all of your information is in one place that you can pull out into all of their different modules, which is very different as to how it used to function, if you're familiar with that environment. Accountants are familiar with it. everyone we hire at some point in their life has dealt with a Microsoft platform, right? And so it's more familiar, it's less change for them, it's easier onboarding for our team members, which is very important when you're thinking about remote employees. We use that for marketing through sales. We have our project management system in a tool called Active Collab, which is actually quite powerful, even though it's a small tool. And we're currently working on integrating all of that into the bigger CRM. We're using SharePoint, so all the document storage, all the information is pushed through in a way that our team has access to. I'm trying to think like what else is relevant from the remote culture perspective. We use LiveCA as a client portal, which is supposed to integrate back to SharePoint. It's not at the point where I would say it's a perfect integration, but it's getting better. And we've been working very closely with them to push them in that way. But the things we use that for, like we have our intake forms for tax in there. We have, all the tasks we can push out to clients in there. We have, all their document storage. I do like one thing in LiveCA particularly a lot, which is everything is tagged. So when you go to search, you're not clicking through 17 folders. You can just click like, okay, I'm looking for a 2019 trial balance, and you can just tag it and it'll pull it up straight from that client account. And the data organization is much more forward-thinking than a lot of the portals I've seen used.
Do you use Microsoft Teams?
We do use Teams for communication internally. We had a very robust Slack world, and so when we converted over to Teams, it was really difficult for me, mostly because I had all the Slack shortcuts and every kind of hack programmed into Slack that you could think of. But I'm getting better with Teams, and I'm getting better at building my own little automation robots. And so one thing my team doesn't know is when I follow up on things, 9 out of 10 times, it's actually a robot following up on things with them that just sends them a team message from me saying hey, how's that project going we talked about last week? And I program that in the call I had last week with them, and I say, okay, I need to follow up with them in a week, make sure they have everything they need to be successful. And so I'll just do that in the background all the time.
Yeah.
I listened to every word, I swear. And there was something you said, I was like, I need to dig into this. What is a sales intake video?
Oh, so when you have those calls, right? Your first prospect call.
You record it.
Yeah, you record it.
And they're cool with it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
All you have to do is ask consent. Yeah.
Does anybody else record sales calls? Oh man, I suck. Okay.
Okay, that's 5% of the room.
No, that's 25 to 30%.
I saw 4 hands. How many people are in here?
We're not good at math. Cool. Yeah. We used to do that, and then it just felt weird. And then we didn't do it anymore. But I could see how it was super helpful.
It
But
is
also,
helpful.
what happens if you have an hour and a half call or an hour call, and then the remoteness of it, everybody watches that hour call.
So they don't, because there's a transcript. So you can actually just search the words, and you can say, when did they talk about their entity in Germany?
See,
so I can just search the transcript for Germany, fast forward to that part of the video and watch it.
I almost don't want to give them the video for that hour-long waste if you've got all the data, but the transcript is great.
It is.
Because then you can know what you
And
talked
that's
about when you
built
didn't.
into Teams right now, where it automatically creates a
And
transcript.
and Zoom, yes.
And Zoom, yeah.
Okay,
And a few other tools as well.
learning along the way. Good.
Quick question. You guys are all tool nerds, which is amazing, and improve the company. But how do you do you spend time on trying to find these cool tools, and how do you motivate the team to use it? Because this is very smart for you, but they need to learn. It's a totally new tool, as you said. Some of them might never use Microsoft, or they use Microsoft. How you create that culture of we need to be tech savvy in a world that is sort of a paper base in the old world, right? And we can start with this.
So for us, we start with the problem. We want to identify a problem that we're actually trying to solve as opposed to just bells and whistles, which actually was a big impetus for Sorban because we, in our one-on-ones really identified the huge bottleneck in trying to get people through the process. And also, I wish it was as simple as putting down 40 grand and just walking away from it. Cumulatively, between our team and external team we work with and Sorban's engineers themselves, we've probably spent 400 to 500 hours cumulatively building this out because we want to have this organizer.
It sounds like you should have stock in that entity now.
I should.
Yeah, you should ask for that.
Yeah, if you're watching this, conversation's coming. So, just making sure that organizer was a natural language, that the flow was as good as it possibly could be, that got them through it efficiently, connecting it to SharePoint, share file, just a number of things. It's like very few softwares come off the shelf in a way that's usable for your use case, right? So it's really a matter of, how do we, develop the software in the way that we need it to, so it's functioning the way we need it to. How do we connect it to every other app we need it to correspond with? But a big part too, to your question about how do you get people to do it, that's the hard part, right? I mean, building the technology is not easy, but getting people to use it in the way you want it to be used consistently is a challenge. And so we're more of the mindset now that, number one, when we're sourcing these solutions, we're involving our CPAs and making them a part of that solution, making them champions, also getting data integration, or migration, I should say, getting people to a point where they can get in there and actually use it because their data's there and they don't have that huge lift of, okay, where do I even start? Training videos, all that sort of stuff, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's hard. I just think about the people that join us versus like another firm that they're thinking about. And typically, like, as you hire more, there's almost like a vibe that you give out in terms of what you hope people will be attracted to, and if they are, great, and if they're not, okay. But like for us, the vibe has always been, if you are frustrated and you want to try these new things, there will be no like real impetus for you to do that. And it's like really out there on the job ads, and it's really out there in terms of constant meetings internally about improvements. And I think you just have to be really mindful of like being like just confident enough to say like you can absolutely do something different, and then give them the support so that they can. And that's what we learned like way too late, was that we had to have these QA teams, these tech teams, these like people dedicated to supporting and implementing new technology. And I say late, but like probably were like our 6th hire was an onboarding manager that was like pretty techie and did that stuff. But like it probably wasn't until like 20 or 30 or 40 when we started putting in like dedicated teams for the technology implementations. Like even just to put in Carbon, it was almost a full-time job for one person for 9 to 12 months at the scale we were, because we didn't have it in the beginning. We were using like Zero Practice Manager or something like that in the beginning. So just, yeah, resources, vibes, and permission.
So not all of us can be as cool as you and only attract the people that are very forward on the tech adoption curve. Most of us have to hire like average accountants, right, who are resistant to change, and also, not necessarily that excited about new things that will, in their opinion, complicate their lives, right? And so it's all about communication, right? It comes down to how do you communicate this early, often, and involve them, as Chase was saying, right? You pull them into that conversation early and you make them feel empowered. You give them permission to disagree and express their opinion, and then you convince those people that are going to be the loudest and most annoying when you implement a change that this is the right change, and they become your champions. Right? They champion this process going forward. Then you schedule training and you make sure that it's consistent. You schedule that training, you make sure you hold that training, you communicate when that training will be and what support services are there for them. You make sure you have the team like Chad does behind them. You have somebody who is inside and out knowing this product and can jump on with them when they need help to actually get through those learning curves and those difficult moments at the beginning of it. And then you make sure to sponsor it, right? Like you make sure every decision maker on your team, everybody that oversees people or leads in any way is sponsoring this. There are no naysayers. Like you make sure that those people are saying to their team, I know this is difficult, I can empathize with that. The learning curve was hard for me too. And also, here's the result we'll get when we get through the hard part right now. Let's think about the big picture and the end of it. And so if you pair those 3 things, communication, training, and sponsorship, change management becomes a whole lot easier.
So we have like 10 minutes left. So we can do like 3 minutes and give 1 minute back and be respectful to people. So what is the trends you guys are seeing? Because you are very front runner. Like where are you betting as a business, and where is the trends that you guys are seeing? And Liz, we can start.
I think that that's such a broad-based question. I'm going to hone in on like the trends I'm seeing in remote work specifically. More and more people want to work remotely. Whether they can and do it successfully is our job, right? So we have to come in and say, okay, so the trend is more people will want to be remote. Are they capable of it? Let's help them get there. Let's give them those tools and those trainings and the support they need to do it well. Can we figure out what's going to happen with salaries? No, like absolutely not. There's economists telling us on one side, oh, salaries are going to equal out in the US, and there's other people saying that's complete BS because you have markets where the cost of living is so low and the cost of living is so high, it's going to reverse back. And so when you start looking at those types of big trends, like it's not data you can use today, right? And so we tend to focus on like what is the practical that we can do today, and that practical is we can work with our remote team to be supported and get better at that function, and then support each other and be more intentional. As you know, Chase opened this up with, we intentionally give them tools to be successful in working in a remote environment with each other and with their clients. So how do we set those tools, give them the definitions, and give them the support they need to be successful? And those are really like the things we're focusing on when it comes to our remote teams. And training and development, but that I think is implied.
How about also investing in your business? Like which areas do you think the trends are going and we need to invest that area?
So investing in our business, we focus on different industries, and the industries that we focus on, we invest in wholeheartedly. Right now, we're seeing the biggest growth in our cannabis practice. And so we're investing quite heavily into that side. We do a ton of fundraising and CFO consulting on that side, and not a ton of bookkeeping, which is interesting. And so we're currently working with a bunch of tech partners to build out, you know, what a true cloud-based end-to-end system for a cannabis company could be. And then bringing and, you know, advocating for the industry and trying to get people like Gusto to openly support it in ways that we can promote it to our client base and the broader world.
That's a good answer.
Thanks.
Mine's going to be worse. Trends. It's okay. So it comes back to, I think, like what you stand for. I keep hitting to repeat that. But people join you for a reason. And I think if you lose sight of why they joined you, you'll lose them. So the trend that we see in the macroeconomic market is people moving, quitting, moving to new jobs. But if you think about how like I have experienced this, it's been the only way that we could support the people that chose to be with us for specific reasons, whether it be career progression because there's just so much opportunity in different areas of the firm, or they want a culture of remote supportive workers, or they want to be able to take a vacation and not come back to work. Like those are some pretty key areas that we try to communicate, and if we fail them, we're screwed. Oh, that's it. Okay. So putting in the work on the firm level, we've done two things to kind of answer your second question. The first is we spent probably $500 to $1 million in labor for what we call support teams. And support teams are like therapy. They're people that will do the work for coverage. So vacation coverage. If you're busy, you can send it to the support team. If you have a hard file and they want QA work, you send it to the support team. And that's the entry point for anybody new to the company. They work on these support teams. And I think that's like been the most fundamental big unlock for someone who's struggling to either keep up with work or has family issues or some. It's like, we've got you. And I think that goes a long way when you're talking to somebody that has been with you for a while versus also someone who's like deciding whether or not they want to leave where they're at to come join you. And the second part is 6 minutes left, so you're good. The second part is having a culture of coaching from the top. And my business partner, Josh, changed his entire role to be a full-time head coach for career coaching, for coaching within the company, for sharing the vision amongst everyone, hearing the things that don't filter up through managers. And that head coach role, I think, is like a fundamental differentiator both when you're attracting and sustaining someone's employment. And I can guarantee you that that has had the most profound effect on our bottom line and on the happiness of the team and on their willingness to believe in things like the technology and in the growth or in whatever it is that they hold on to, because everyone's so different. So
that was a brilliant answer. Your
two
support
things.
team is like flat out brilliant. And I totally agree with your coaching mentality. Like we've done the same thing and it's made a giant difference, especially with remote teams and connectivity.
do you think you've saved people from leaving?
I think so. And we just recently switched over to group coaching, and they're actually liking that more because there's more peer connection occurring. And we were very strategic with the groups we put together, right? They could not be on the same industry team. They had to be in similar roles and levels so that they had similar issues they were dealing with. But it's made like a giant difference just in the last couple months even.
Yeah, so cannabis, I would agree with. That's, still an area where people or CPA firms are a little tepid, but it's a legitimate business within state laws, maybe not federal, and they need our services or else they're getting it from someone who's not competent or qualified. There's a
Frequently.
lot of, yeah. We actually informally named that Dank Horse as a sub-brand of Dark Horse.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We have a firm called High Rock, and we had to start a new brand because our brand was so not that.
Right.
So then we started Rebel Rock, which is we have a firm name with high in it and couldn't use it. Like what?
Right. I think I may have gave an aneurysm to one of our VPs who heads up a lot of our marketing and branding. But
Dank.
nonetheless, CAS just in general is a huge one, right? I really see that go in the way of IT, where IT used to be in-house pretty much exclusively, and then the cloud came along, and all of a sudden, talent wanted to go to the firms that were dealing with multiple companies, so they weren't pigeonholed into one narrow, area of technology and could build a broader skill set, and then it made more sense for small businesses to use it on a fractional level. I mean, the same thing's happening with CAS. So, it's a big effort of ours to start to productize and create these more fractional CFO level services in a way that has consistent delivery of consistent deliverables, because fractional CFO can be anything and everything. It's like a blank canvas, right? So instead of operating on a blank canvas, we want to have it so it's more of a coloring book, with the lines already kind of defined. In terms of, I guess, talent, what we see is people want to be a part of something, Yeah. I mean, you could call it a cult, you could call it whatever you want, but people want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, and it's oftentimes not just enough to say, well, you're serving the clients and you're helping them out, that's table stakes. So, how do we make people feel like they're part of something that is much bigger than themselves and that they're able to do more in the collective? We just see a lot of folks that we interview a ton of CPAs, whether they're, kind of at lower levels or they want to become one of our accelerators. There's a lot of misery out there, and I think that often gets brushed over. We hear about people's experiences, and there's just a lot of just crappy experiences out there. Long hours, being asked to do things that are, beyond the call of duty. No additional compensation, just no purpose or meaning in their work, and they're fleeing firms that aren't providing that. So to the extent that you have something that is a rallying cry for your people and a reason for them to show up every day and actually be working towards something and engaged in the business, that's what people are looking for. And I think the firms that are doing that are able to get talent where other firms have a tax manager position that goes open for a year unfilled. So.
You forgot to say people advisory.
People advisory, yes, huge.
No.
Well, no, I mean, people advisory is kind of an extension of a CAS offering, right? It's a way to
Good save.
Yeah, great
Good
save, right?
Good save.
It honestly is a way to
Bonus points.
Yeah.
right, bookkeeping to fractional CFO, payroll to people advisory. It's kind of a similar idea.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was amazing, really, really amazing. We learned, I think, so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.